have to employ so many people to stop the surge in online fraud. New evidence, some parts of our economy are growing, but companies are not employing more people. Why are we spending 20 billion rand a year on enterprise and supply development, but getting virtually nothing for it? What happens if you have to cancel your holiday at the last minute? And we celebrate the magical, mystical substance that keeps our firms and our economy going this coffee day. All of that to come, but first, the very latest Eyewitness News.
Good evening, I'm Maki Molapo. The Madlanga Commission of Inquiry will resume its public hearings on October 13th. The Commission has released a statement this afternoon saying the break is due to the unavailability of Commissioner Sesi Baloyi. Baloyi will be attending to duties as a member of the Judicial Service Commission. Proceedings were adjourned earlier today after crime intelligence boss Dumsani Khumalo fell ill. Khumalo was sick Monday. The Commission is probing allegations of corruption and infiltration in the criminal justice system. Meanwhile, Justice Minister Mamoloko Kubaya says State Capture Commission-related court cases are making progress with billions already recovered. Kubaya says these include high-profile matters such as the Transnet Transaction Advisory Contract, Bosasa-related prosecutions and Eskom-linked cases. Kubaya was responding to a written parliamentary question on the number of government officials and politicians who have been charged for state capture-related crimes. Babalo Ndenze has more.
Minister Mamoloko Kubaya says the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption, IDAC, continues to pursue priority state capture and corruption-related cases in line with the recommendations of the State Capture Commission. She says currently 11 cases involving 23 government officials and one politician are before various courts across the country. These include high-profile cases involving the country's biggest state-owned entities like Transnet and Denel. Kubaya tells Parliament that most of these cases have been set down for trial dates this year and in 2026, with significant progress recorded in securing restraint orders through the Asset Forfeiture Unit, including an order worth over 1 billion rand in the Transnet matter. Kubaya says happening parallel to the enrolled cases, the IDAC is also conducting investigations into 9 major matters involving 20 government officials and 4 politicians. Babalo Ndenze, Eyewitness News.
And we move to reactions from the courts where some political parties have welcomed a court judgment convicting EFF leader Julius Malema of contravening firearm laws. The East London Magistrates Court found Malema guilty of breaching the Firearms Control Act after he fired shots into the air during a rally in 2018. The DA and Freedom Front Plus say Malema's conviction demonstrates that he acted recklessly. Alfred Mushana has more.
DA police spokesperson Ian Cameron says Julius Malema firing shots at a rally in 2018 reflects the violent nature of the EFF.
This confirms the violent and criminal culture that the EFF promotes. South Africa's firearm laws must apply equally, and no leader should be allowed to flout them.
The Freedom Front Plus adds that the ruling demonstrates that no one is above the law, but expressed disappointment that sentencing will only take place next year. Meanwhile, Patriotic Alliance leader Gayton McKenzie had this to say earlier this week.
If they say guilty, then please, Malema Itlos is my fellow bandit. I will not allow you guys to go for my Pandit Alliance. Me and Malema will be Pandit Alliance.
Malema intends to appeal the ruling, claiming the charges against him were racially motivated. Alpha Ramshwana, Eyewitness News, East London.
Chairperson of Parliament's International Relations Committee, Supra Mahumapelo, says the death of Ambassador Nathi Mthethwa must be properly investigated to avoid speculation about how he died. Mthethwa's body was found at a Paris hotel yesterday after checking into a room on the 22nd floor. Mahumapelo says he called Mthethwa's wife after it was initially reported on Monday that he could not be traced. Lindsay Dentlinger has more.
Former Northwest Premier Supra Mahumapelo has recalled the early political activism years he shared with Nathi Mthethwa to managing the political turbulence in the province together following the ANC's 2007 Polokwane conference.
So in the ANC, we are just taught to be selfless. So you strive to be selfless for the rest of your life. And this is what Comrade Nati was doing, from the student movement into the ANC Youth League.
Mahuma Pelo says Parliament's International Relations Committee was looking forward to working with Mthethwa to advance diplomatic and economic relations with France.
Our hope is that the French authorities, working with the South African authorities, they will investigate this matter to the fullest so that we don't make speculations, but rather get what is the actual cause of the death.
Mthethwa had served as the country's ambassador to France for less than 2 years, after more than 2 decades as an MP and cabinet minister. Lindsay Dentlinger, Eyewitness News, Claremont.
Meanwhile, as French authorities continue to probe the circumstances surrounding his death, Mthethwa's relative has travelled to France to get clarity on the factors behind his death. His family has told Eyewitness News that they're yet to meet to formally discuss his death. Santaco in the Western Cape says recent leadership elections and bereavements at Kata and Kodeta have delayed peace talks in resolving recent tensions that led to the closure of some routes. The 30-day shutdown of specific taxi routes between Mfuleni, Khayelitsha and Somerset West has reached the halfway mark today. The measures were implemented to prevent taxi-related killings linked to a feud between the associations over these routes. Santaco Provincial Chairperson Mandla Hermanes says they hope both taxi organizations will find the time to resolve their differences soon.
Because that's the only way we'll be able to resolve this. Courts will not solve it. Not even the department on its own will be able to solve it until there is commitment from both organizations.
Kodeta has approached the Western Cape High Court asking it to reverse the Provincial Mobility Department's decision, a matter that is set to return to court on Saturday for both parties to argue their cases. Gold's trading at $3,860.87 an ounce. The rand's at 17.21 to the dollar, at 23.18 to the pound, at 20.16 to the euro. Brent crude oil's at $65.35 a barrel.
In your sport, Kaizer Chiefs looking to improve on goal scoring as they take on AmaZulu in the Betway Premiership. Springboks focused on the job at hand against a wounded Argentina. And Gail Monfils to retire from tennis after the 2026 season.
A look at your weather. Clear skies in store for Gauteng tomorrow. Joburg will drop to overnight lows of 13 degrees and peak at highs of 27. Pretoria is at 14, also reaching highs of 27 degrees. Vereeniging's at 12 and 28. A partly cloudy start for the mother city, becoming fine with fresh southeasterly winds tomorrow at a low of 12 and a high of 18 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News this hour. The Madlanga Commission of Inquiry will resume its public hearings on October 13th.
EWN, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app. EWN Traffic.
Well, in Boksburg, heading towards Brakpan, we still have those roadworks causing about a 30-minute delay. This is between Osborne and Carnival City. Also traveling through the Southgate area, heading towards Diepkloof. There's slow-moving traffic. This is on the N12 westbound, approaching the Uncle Charlie's interchange. There's also slow-moving traffic in the Roodepoort area. This is on Randfontein Road between Miles Stalker and Adcock. While in Bryanston, bumper-to-bumper traffic, that's heading towards Roodepoort. On the N1 southbound between Rivonia Road and Malibongwe Drive, we still have huge delays. That's driving through Alex on the N3 southbound between the Batu interchange and Van Buren, while in the mother city, slow-moving traffic, M5 southbound between Pinelands and Kenilworth. Also slow-moving traffic, that's on the N2 outbound between Marlborough Main and Airport Approach. If you come across any other traffic issues, please WhatsApp us on 072-702-1702.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA Corporate and Investment Banking, proud sponsor of South African Auto Week 2025. Good evening. It's 9 minutes after 6. I'm Stephen Grootes. Welcome to the program. Well, another strong update from Capitec for their 6 months, and a 26% rise in headline earnings. It's astonishing to look at the momentum behind Capitec. We'll speak to their CEO, Graham Lee. He's just a few months into the job, and of course he takes over from someone who became legendary, but in his defense, Lee's been part of Capitec for a very long time. So looking forward to that conversation. We'll ask a little bit about the extraordinary efforts they have to make now to basically protect customers from fraud. There does seem to be a sort of wave of this stuff. Looking forward to that conversation in a couple of moments. The ABSA Purchasing Managers Index out today. And Diswet Nondulule from ABSA CIB will talk to you about that. If you look at the Business Activity Index, that shows that there is progress. People are doing things. You look at the employment index and it's actually down. And that was what worries me, really quite a stark difference. We spend an unbelievable amount on enterprise and supplier development. It's 20 billion rand a year. And I think even the strongest offender of the practice would battle to say we're getting value for money. I mean, it really doesn't feel like that. Looking forward to a conversation about that with Jamil Khan from Unconventional CA. And we do need to talk a little bit about coffee. It's International Coffee Day. And I'm going to tell you something about myself that I'm not very proud of. Okay, so just get that out of the way. I've become a coffee snob. I mean, I wasn't when I was younger. I used to look down on coffee snobs. There were people I work with, people I worked with, happy to drop some names if I need to, who would have this coffee implement and that coffee implement, and I would look down on them. I'm afraid to say that I've become one of them. So I have paraphernalia I bring, I have a thermos I bring because, it's just not good enough, all of that sort of thing. I would like to know how you feel about coffee snobs and whether you're one of them, or am I alone? Or maybe I'm the only one who will actually admit it. 011 883 0702 021 446 0567. And please be honest on the WhatsApp line on 072 702 1702. Do you believe the coffee that you make is actually better than the coffee you can buy? I'm sure it's cheaper. That I'm sure of. But do you believe the coffee you make is actually better than the coffee you buy in the office? 12 minutes after 6.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app
and DSTV channel 856.
Well, Capitec Bank Holdings reporting headline earnings up by 26% in the 6 months to the end of August. Operating profit before tax up by 26% too. The bank was able to grow its active client base to 25 million people, non-banking businesses going up very strongly. Graham Lee is the CEO at Capitec. Graham, good evening and welcome to the Money Show. Obviously a very strong update, and you at Capitec still have a huge amount of momentum.
Good evening, Stephen. It's a pleasure to join you. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, the first 6 months of this financial year has been characterized by continuing the momentum that we've started over the course of the last couple of years. And that is really started with a very strong focus on our clients and making sure that we understand them and their needs as best as we possibly can, and then designing our solutions for them. So we are gratified that they continue to vote with their feet by coming to Capitec.
The contribution from your non-banking businesses, so insurance, lotto tickets, things like that, I mean, they're becoming a lot more important to you. Are there any other areas that you could move into at this stage?
At this point, we really are focused on those areas. There's still a lot of work to do in insurance and ensuring that the three products that we have are the very best that they can possibly be, and that we're serving our clients end-to-end with the best client experience of any insurance company in the market. In terms of Capitec Connect, there is still massive growth opportunities for us if we focus on it. And that's before you even start on the opportunities that still exist for us in personal banking and the VAS products that we offer to personal bank. And then, as I said earlier today, the area that I'm most excited about is business banking. And I'm excited about it because it's such a massive growth opportunity for us at Capitec. But it's also, if we do that well, it's such a massive growth opportunity for the country, because all of the additional employment that we should expect in South Africa over the course of the next 10 years will come from small business.
Are there particular sectors where you could see that potential growth? Because I think there's a sense that actually the economy is not growing, and it's really only if it's growing that you're going to get this opportunity.
There are some headwinds, and certainly financial growth or economic growth in the whole macroeconomy is not where we would like it to be. But yes, we do see segments of growth, and we see those segments throughout the country in the smaller and emerging businesses that provide so many of the goods and services to ordinary South Africans. We see it in merchants, in restaurants, in taverns, as well as small manufacturers, manufacturing things for the people immediately around them, for the communities immediately around them.
You say that 91% of your transactions were cashless, so they were through cards and digital payments, and we've been seeing that move away from cash, which is safer for everyone. Are you also seeing a lot more people using things like Apple Pay or Samsung Pay? Are more people using those methods rather than just their card? They're tapping it through a device.
Absolutely. As you say, there's been a continued shift from cash to digital, and our physical cards, they're up 19% to 1.2 billion transactions. But if you look at the pay wallets, they're up by 131% compared to the first 6 months last year. So there's been a massive uptake in those new form factors for using your card.
You employ, I was looking through your documents today, you employ 400 people just to stop fraud. Has there been a big increase in the number of attempts to steal from your clients? Are you seeing a lot more sort of a criminality or attempted criminality, people trying to get money from people who bank with you?
Crime is a problem broadly in South Africa, and digital crime is no exception. Our vision is to be the most trusted brand in South Africa. In order to accomplish that, we have to build capacity to ensure that we have the very best financial crime unit in the country. And that takes investment. It takes investment in both human capital and in technology. This digital crime, it's not a Capitec story, it's a South African story. And we intend to play a big role to the benefit of the whole of the country. Now, the most vulnerable clients are targeted, the elderly, the people who know the least, and it's our responsibility to give them the very best protection and the very best education. Now, you mentioned 400 people. It's going to be even more. And not only are there 400 people, there are 400 of the very best and brightest, most talented people. And we continue to look for the smartest and brightest people to come and fight this war for us. And to any of your listeners, if you are one of those smart, talented people, and you want to use your talents to fight these criminals, then come and join us, because we are going to fight them and we're going to win.
When you track down these people, when you see these payments, these illegal payments, and you stop them, you do what you can to protect your clients. You obviously investigate as far as you can. The difficulty is that you're not the police, and the best and the brightest people who may work for you are not the police. Are you ever able to get convictions for what people are trying to do? And they may not even be in the country.
So we do cooperate quite a lot with law enforcement, and we have contributed to a large number of arrests, and in further beyond arrests, in prosecutions, bringing down syndicates. It's a hard job. It certainly is. And to your point, many of the criminals are outside of the country. But we do cooperate, and we find that cooperation works.
You talk about getting the best and the brightest involved in this, and there is a global fight for talent in banking. It's international. Are you finding that some of the people that you employ, Capitec would be a good brand for a lot of people in South Africa to work for, but some of the people that you employ, are they being tempted to go somewhere else, by which I mean not your competition here so much, but your competition outside the country to other banks?
We hire the best and the brightest, and we give them opportunities to learn. We support them with the best education and the best opportunities for development. And so, yes, of course, that makes them very marketable and very attractive to people, both to other companies, both within South Africa and outside. Our view on that is that talent is not a dam, it's a river. And our best approach to ensuring that the skills that we need are filled are by developing people. So we will continue to invest in people, continue to develop them, even if some of them leave.
Okay. You've been in the position as CEO at Capitec. I think it's 3 months now, Graham. You've been a big part of Capitec for a long time. You must know it inside out. But has anything surprised you now you're in the CEO's office? I don't know, did the color of the wall or the temperature of the air conditioning surprise you perhaps, or something more fundamental than that?
No, it's actually been surprisingly ordinary, really, the transition. To your point, I have been here a long time, and it's not just a question of knowing the place and knowing the products. It's really also about knowing the people. And Capitec is exceptionally good at getting things done because we work together. And the reason that I make that point now is all of our success comes from a larger team. And that larger team is still here. And that makes it very easy for someone like me to be able to take on, to be entrusted with the privilege of continuing to tell this wonderful story.
Graham Lee, thank you very much indeed. Do appreciate your time on The Money Show. I'm sure we'll be speaking for some time to come. Graham Lee is the CEO at Capitec. 20 minutes now after 6 o'clock.
The Money Show on 702.
Monday to Friday, 6 to 8 p.m.
Well, the ABSA Purchasing Managers Index showing that its business activity index is moving into what's described as expansionary territory for the first time since October. So new sales orders are up significantly. There's a lot more business, but the employment index was down by 6 points. Andiswa Nondodule is an economist at ABSA CIB. Andiswa, good evening. Thanks for your time. Generally speaking, when the Purchasing Managers Index, when PMI moves past 50 points, that's a good thing. What is it telling us about our economy at the moment?
Yeah, so as you said, if we are above 50, that signals expansion in the economy. And I think what that means is that we are likely to see positive growth in the third quarter. As you saw, so the index moved to 52.2. It was supported by the business activity index and the new sales orders. So if you look at the business activity index as well, so that printed also above the 50 mark. And actually the average for Q3 is also above 50. So that index usually has a correlation to actual manufacturing output as measured by Stats SA. So I think it signals that we are likely to see some improvement in the manufacturing sector in the third quarter.
The employment index was down. Why would that be down when the business activity index is up quite strongly?
Yeah. So I think, the employment one is a bit of a disappointment. I mean, it's been below that 50 mark for over a year now. And I think what manufacturers are looking to see is a sustained improvement in business activity, because the print that's above 50 is the first one since October last year. So we haven't really seen a sustained improvement in that index. So I think manufacturers are waiting to see a prolonged period, sustained period of improving activity and demand in order to invest in hiring.
Have labor costs gone up in any way that might be a bit of a disincentive to employ? I mean, we've seen a slight change in labor laws, which actually should, on balance, be better for companies. But has anything else shifted apart from just this uncertainty?
Yeah, so some of the respondents actually did point to the fact that, labor costs have increased, not just labor costs, but, your input cost pressures in terms of the price of raw materials and so forth. So there has been some price pressures which have probably affected the sector.
The expected business conditions index is below 50. So in other words, people are actually very pessimistic about the future at the moment.
Yeah.
I presume that's... Go on, yeah?
No, you can carry on.
So, I presume that's both about what's happening here and in the US.
Yeah, so exactly that, right? So that index is below 50. And actually, it's below 50 for the first time since April. So I think, what's happening, especially in the global environment, is what manufacturers are highlighting as having a damp on the sector. So I think we need to, get a hang of what's happening with global trade and also our own issues, our own political stuff, our own policy issues. So in order for the sector rather to be confident about the future. But I think we need those things. And also I think we need sustained, growth in South Africa. We need investment. So we need a lot of things to work in order for there to be really that confidence in the outlook.
So many people talk about confidence, and so many politicians, I think, are preparing to blame the Americans for everything, when actually there's so much work for us to do here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we still have, yes, there's been an improvement in structural reforms, but I think there's still more that can be done from that front. We're seeing, improvements in ESCOM with some of the units coming back onto the grid, but I think we can all attest that there still needs to be more done from that front. I think, we also need growth that, is above 1%. I mean, South Africa has been tittering between growth of 0 and 0.6%. And we were actually excited by a growth number of 0.8%, which is actually low. But I think that the excitement came from the fact that it's the highest number in about 2 years. So we need that sustained growth. We need, further progress on structural reforms.
Yeah, no, I mean, of course. Andiswa Nondudule, thanks very much indeed, economist at ABSA CIB. And we talk about growth. I mean, isn't that what it all boils down to? We need to fix what's going on here before we complain about what's going on elsewhere. 25 minutes after 6.
The Money Show.
The markets.
Chris Stewart's portfolio manager at 91. Chris, good evening. You would have heard the Capitec CEO a little while ago. It seems almost everything's still going in the right direction there.
Yeah, good evening, Stephen. One of the few South African companies, I guess, to be delivering credible top-line growth in what is obviously a tough environment. I was talking to some colleagues today bemoaning the fact that many of the so-called SA Inc. stocks are indeed struggling to show decent top-line growth at the moment. Capitec, certainly the exception to the rule, continuing to grow strongly across its retail banking franchise, which we all know well and which is well established, but adding to that a variety of other different growth vectors across the business. Their business banking operations still small but growing quite nicely, and then moving into adjacent markets to what one would traditionally have thought of as retail banking, including offerings such as Capitec Connect and also some revolutionary offerings within the payment system as well.
I mean, it's really the brand that people kind of want to emulate at the moment, and I can't see any of the older brands sort of catching up, despite the fact that banking is getting more and more competitive in South Africa.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult. You've got large established businesses with large established revenue pools founded upon, historic legacy business models, which tend to be quite cost intensive, both from a people perspective as well as from a systems perspective. And it's very difficult, to react to pricing competition when you have a very large entrenched revenue pool at risk. And I also think it's quite difficult for businesses to compete even when they know what's coming at them, simply because larger businesses with bigger legacy within them find it a little bit more difficult to be as nimble. I think Graham actually sort of put it quite nicely during the results presentation of Capitec this morning, and that's that you are unlikely to differentiate yourself from peers long-term in banking through strategy or indeed through product differentiation, because products can be copied. It's the execution of that strategy and the execution of that differentiated offering that's going to make all the difference. And Capitec over many years have proved themselves as very, very good at doing that.
A pre-close, an update from SPAR today. Clearly an uptick in their sales.
Yeah, 51-week update to the 19th of September, if memory serves me correctly. SPAR's really been, under the pumps this year. It's lost about a third of its market capitalization. Have finally completed the exit from an ill-fated foray into Switzerland, having done the same thing. Exiting Poland not too far before then, and in the process of trying to exit their operations in the United Kingdom as well. That's helping them to shore up their balance sheet, and I guess starting to get investors to focus more on the growth prospects of the business and less on the financial woes and balance sheet vulnerability of the business. And a modest turnaround in turnover in the second half of their financial year by the look of it. Which I think the market took some cheer from, and it'll be interesting to see whether the management of SPAR can in fact convince investors that in a very tough environment they can start to at least hold their market share, start to show some growth in the year ahead.
Gold up again. Don't know how many times you and I have discussed that, Chris, but partly, of course, because of the shutdown of the US federal government.
Yeah, we've seen the US government starting its first shutdown in, I think, almost 7 years. And interestingly enough, I believe it's the third shutdown of the US federal government under the auspices of Donald Trump presidency. So it's his third shutdown, so he's used to these things. Lots of brinkmanship going on. The Republicans blaming the Democrats trying to use the opportunity to push some of their election manifestos, particularly with regard to healthcare in the United States. Lots of political mudslinging going on, and a government that's sitting in limbo and a budget that can't get approved. So at least, as we said earlier, some comfort that we're not the only government in the world that don't seem to be able to get their budget approved.
Indeed. Thanks very much indeed, Chris Stewart's portfolio manager at 91. Just gone 6:30, time for the latest Eyewitness News. Marky, good evening.
Thanks, Stephen. Good evening. We begin in the Western Cape, where Sandparks has urged the public to avoid the area between Tafelberg Road and Deer Park, where firefighters are still busy with mop-up operations. Fire crews battled winds, blistering conditions, and a rapidly moving fire line last night to protect homes at the foot of Table Mountain. Sandpark spokesperson Charles Patlani says the fire has been contained, but firefighters are still on scene.
Our crew will be on the ground, just extinguishing some of the embers that we have here. There's a sense that there might be rain later today, which will assist us if it does come through. But we will have a crew overnight. We're bringing in some crew to monitor this fire overnight.
The city's Fire and Rescue Services spokesperson, Jermaine Carroll, has pleaded with the public to be cautious as the new fire season approaches.
It is a timely reminder to the public of how easily wildfires can start as we head into the warmer months. We appeal to everyone to do their bit for fire safety, whether vegetation or structural.
The Gauteng Transport Authority has committed to focusing on the need for investment in road infrastructure during Transport Month this year. A mobility summit is being held in Sandton to mark the start of Transport Month. The authority says Gauteng needs about 120 billion rand to build new roads to cater for the growing population in the province. Dokozo Khumalo has more.
Gauteng Transport Authority Interim Chief Executive Officer Tsepo Khobe stressed that government needs to find new means to ensure that growth of mobility is unhindered. He was speaking at a two-day mobility summit in Sandton today. He noted that the province is currently struggling with congestion on its highways, which is now affecting residential areas too.
Now traffic does not start on the freeway. It now starts in front of your estate gate. And that in itself is the reality you are facing as Gauteng, where congestion will now move back into the suburbs, and as it moves back into the suburbs, it will create much more of a bigger challenge. You will, at the current moment, you're spending 3 hours trying to get out of where you are.
He adds that there is a great need for investment to be made into the road infrastructure. Ndogozo Khumalo, Eyewitness News, Sandton.
The Mineral and Petroleum Resources Department has attributed the latest petrol price hike to a stronger rand, which has outpaced higher oil prices. South Africans can expect moderate adjustments to the price of petrol and diesel effective today. The price of petrol is increasing by between 1 and 8 cents a litre, putting the price of both grades at 21 rand 48 cents. Meanwhile, diesel users will see some relief between 8 and 10 cents a litre. Eliminating paraffin decreases by 11 cents a litre. And international affairs specialists warn that US President Donald Trump's new peace plan for Palestine lacks detail. Trump announced his 20-point peace plan, which Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has backed on Monday, giving Hamas 3 to 4 days to respond. Under the proposal, Hamas would need to disarm and will be excluded from having any role in the governance of Gaza. International relations analyst Professor Yossi Meckelberg says the plan creates momentum and hope, but the details are important.
The urgent need to see end of war is significant. See the hostages returning, reconstruction of Gaza. The thing is the follow-through, to ensure first that Israel and Hamas accepting it, and the international community remains focused on implementation.
I'll look at your weather. A fine day in store for Gauteng tomorrow. Temperatures will drop to overnight lows between 12 and 14 degrees and peak at alternating highs of 27 and 28 degrees. A partly cloudy start for Cape Town, becoming fine with fresh southeasterly winds at a low of 12 and a high of 14 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News. Sandparks has urged the public to avoid the area between Tafelberg Road and Deer Park, where firefighters are still busy with mop-up operations.
EWN Traffic.
Well, at this stage in the Boksburg area, roadwork still causing about a 30-minute delay heading towards Brakpan. That's on the N17 eastbound between Osborne Road and Carnival City. Also driving through Southgate heading towards Diepkloof. Expect some delays. N12 westbound. That's approaching the M1 Uncle Charlie's interchange. In Bryanston, also slow-moving traffic. N1 southbound. That's heading towards Roodepoort between Rivonia Road and Malibongwe Drive. While in the mother city, we still have that accident scene. N2 inbound approaching Roppenberg, causing heavy delays. Also, look out for that accident scene on the N1 inbound after the engine garage, causing heavy delays. If you come across any other traffic issues, please WhatsApp us on 072 702 1702.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Beyond every boardroom is a story waiting to be written. A story of a business and its potential, of a community that thrives, a hospital that serves, and energy that powers millions of dreams. It's a story that only gets better with a partner that has the expertise and solutions to make it a reality. At ABSA CIB, we are invested in your story, and we invite you to write it with us, because your story matters. ABSA, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Betway is taking you to dizzying new heights in one of the world's most popular games, Aviator. Place your bets and watch the multiplier climb higher and higher. Pick the right time to cash out and stand to win millions on a single bet. It's all possible from the palm of your hand. Get way more only at Betway. Betway is licensed and regulated by the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board. No persons under the age of 18 are permitted to gamble. South African Responsible Gambling Program toll-free counseling line 0800 006 008 or WhatsApp help to 076 675 0710. Winners know when to stop.
Tani Esther, or should I say the Tupperware Tani? How's business going?
Business is booming. I've been operating out of the boot of my car for 10 years, but shame, it couldn't keep up with my growing empire.
Okay, so you sold it to We Buy Cars?
Yes, quick. Sold my old one, bought a bigger one. I even sold some of my Tupperware to the friendly guy who picked up my car.
Stick to what you know best, eh, Tani?
Excuse me?
Never mind. We Buy Cars. Geared for your business, geared for you.
WhatsApp Stephen
on 072
702
1702.
Well, I started the show with a confession that I am a coffee snob. I'm one of those people who believes that the coffee I make, me, myself and I, the three of us together, is better than the coffee you can actually buy in many of the places where you go in for work or meetings or whatever. It does seem, thankfully, that I'm not alone. Marlene says, "Hi, Stephen. My brother-in-law roasts his own coffee beans. She describes his coffee with one word. Okay, I like that." Hendrine says, "Like wine, life is too short for bad coffee." I would have to agree with that. Miranda, so here's the recipe. I mix 1 teaspoon of cheap coffee granules, 1 teaspoon sugar with 1/3 of a mug of milk. I boil in the microwave while watching carefully, hopefully through the door. Add tap water and enjoy. Best coffee ever. Love you, S. Did you say the word minions? I don't know. Am I allowed to use the word minions? Anyway, thank you, Miranda. I appreciate that. And then Sashi says, on the topic of coffee at home, I froth milk in the carton by giving it a quick shake. I add froth first, then boiling water. You'll never burn the bean. A 50-50 mix of a more coffee effective brand, and your choice brings forth a surprisingly hearty cup. Feel free to make it on your own. Okay. Coffee recipes and more this International Coffee Day, 22 minutes to 7.
EWN Sport.
Stolikile, are you about to get that cup of that tin of root coffee out of your bag and gooi it at me?
I'm a bit of a snob as well.
Thank goodness.
So when people are talking about Ree coffee, I'm like, not chicory, darling.
No.
Never that. Either Dowie Egberts or Jacobs. Mine is, so I put in the Jacobs and then almond milk, 30 seconds in the microwave. Let it just bubble up a little bit and then add hot water. So creamy, so delicious.
So instant coffee and almond milk.
No.
Well,
yes.
yes.
But it's because I don't take sugar. So
Yeah.
the almond milk just gives it like a
Gives
little
it
bit of a... Yeah.
So I know a member of my family, they know who they are.
Uh-huh.
They will drink only Rick coffee and they have it black. And you used to know that it had been a little bit of a long night when they would say, I'll have Rick coffee and a drop of milk.
Oh, it was bad for them.
Yeah, then you knew. Okay. Lots of rugby on the go, lots of football.
Yep.
Safa doing its non-apology stuff. What else is
All of
going
that.
on?
Your favorite teams in action tonight, Stephen. Kaizer Chiefs can move back into the Betway Premiership top
Let's
3.
hope they don't.
That's with a win over Amazulu tonight. The Gama boys will look to end their 2-game winless run in the league with success over Usotu. While co-coach Khalil Ben Youssef has discussed the need to improve their goal scoring, they haven't managed more than 1 goal in their 9 games across all competitions this season.
Well
the
done.
only problem we have until now is the last third. We create a lot of opportunity every game, but we are in a situation we don't score a lot of goal. Like the last game against Marumo Galans, when you score the first goal and you get then 3 opportunity to score the second goal to finish the game, you don't score. You will be always in difficult situation. You can concede any moment. It happened this game. If you remember also against Polokwane City, was a little bit frustrated when the players start to joke when we finished the game, and we was angry against them because this kind of game you have to finish.
Orlando Pirates last night claimed a 2-0 victory over TS Galaxy as Tshegofatso Mabasa also got on the score sheet, netting his 50th goal for the club. Adeslam Madu has heaped praise on his professionalism, with the forward now 8 goals shy of equaling Benedict Vilagazi's record.
It shows a fantastic team spirit of this player. The beginning of the season, he was not playing, but you can see that he was involved 100% in training, very professional, all the time advising his teammates, close to them, very clean heart. Yeah, you know that for a striker to score, it's very important, and he knows that it's very important, and he was pushing. Nice, fantastic spirit from Mabasa and all the players. I'm very happy about that.
In selected UEFA Champions League games tonight, PSG clash with Barcelona while Arsenal are at home to Olympiacos. Mikel Arteta has addressed criticism of the Gunners this season amid suggestions they aren't capable of winning trophies.
Well, I'm aware the moment I step in this chair that what I want with this football club is to win major trophies. That's it. Nobody else has to put that line into us. That's the ambition, the first day, and the excuses. Yeah, they never been part of my life.
In a result just in from the World Cup, Australia's women have opened their campaign with an 89-run win over New Zealand. That's thanks to a top score of 115 from Ashley Gardner. And Rassie Erasmus says there'll be no complacency from the Springboks as they take on Argentina in their final rugby championship match. They've scored 110 points in their last 2 encounters, and victory at Twickenham on Saturday would see them successfully defend their title.
We're all obviously chasing the perfect game. Last Saturday wasn't the perfect game. I mean, 60 minutes into the game was actually in the balance, but the way the set phases go and the way the defense went, eventually guys could use the individual skills within the structure. So, yeah, we definitely don't box them in, but different players got different skill sets. When Andre is playing, we don't tell him exactly how to play. The same when Grant's playing or Sasha's playing. So I don't think there's a shift in terms of our mindset.
Tolagele Mganga, Eyewitness News Sport.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
and DSTV channel 856.
Well, I was talking yesterday a little bit about Discovery and their medical aid contributions. I know they're called contributions, but are basically what you're going to be paying for medical aid. And making the point that their prices were going up. They were going up as you sort of would expect. I think it was around 7% year on year, but they were deferring the increase until April because they had a higher than necessary solvency ratio. And the question was, well, why not just have a lower price throughout the year rather than a kind of holiday at the beginning of the year and then have to pay more for the rest of the year? And I think, make the point that it might just well be to have to make sure that you don't have too big an increase the next year. And in fact, Discovery getting in touch to confirm that that pretty much is the case. That if you have a deferred increase, well, yes, they will lose a little bit of money at the beginning, but after that, things will go back to normal, and that means that when it comes to the increase the year after that, you won't have an increase that is higher than medical inflation. Whereas if you basically had a lower increase for the entire year, that would mean that the increase next year would be above medical inflation. So clarity on that does sort of make sense, and I do get it. And people obviously are very price sensitive at the moment. So the way in which they're affected by the price increase does also matter. I'm sure quite a lot of thought's gone into all of this. I wonder if any of the other medical aids are in the same situation. 011 883 0702 021 446 0567 and your voice notes tonight on 072 702 1702.
702.
702.
Stephen is on X.
At Stephen Grootes.
16 minutes to 7. You know, as a country and as businesses, we pour an unbelievable amount of money into enterprise and supplier development. It's about 20 billion rand a year. If you look at the number of small businesses that fail or have to close down, well, you can see that I don't think we're necessarily getting value for money. Jamil Khan is the co-founder of Unconventional CA. They're a sort of business incubator. They try and support entrepreneurs. Jamil, good evening. You, in fact, are very critical of the current situation. What do you believe is going wrong?
Thanks, Stephen. Look, I think there's a couple of issues here. Firstly, when it comes to enterprise and supply development and the way it's spent, the first thing is that there's too much regulation on the sector, right? So because it's very much compliance driven, it's a bit of a tick box exercise for companies because enterprise and supply development, the amount or the calculated amount that a business needs to spend is 3% of net profit after tax, 1% on ED, 2% on SD. And now what we find is that a lot of the businesses are just trying to keep their BE level, right? So to keep their compliance and keep the BE level up there. And so they don't necessarily think about, what do we do to support small businesses using the spend? It's more a case of, okay, at the end of the year, this is our profit. Let's calculate the profit and let's get the spend out to keep our status up. So the first thing is it's very much a compliance exercise, for the corporates that need to spend this money. And then I think the second thing around it is what then happens with that money, right? So how is the business spending that money to create long-term sustainable value for the SMEs and the small businesses in our country?
Do we need to, can the system be saved with a tweak, or do we need to abandon the whole thing and look at something else?
It's a good question. I think in terms of the work that we do, there's definite, I'd say, significant tweaking that might be necessary, right? Like I said, the first thing is it's a compliance spend. So how do we change that for it to link more to the business and turn it into a strategic business spend, right? To say, if I'm a large corporate, where's my business going to go in the next 2 to 3 years, right? What sort of small businesses would I be using or needing that links into my business strategy? And then sort of building a program around the SMEs that business might need, pull them into an enterprise development program so that, we can then start to see who are the people we need to work with, what are the services and products we might need, and then at the same time start to bring them on to be suppliers for the business and pull them into a supplier development program. So I think it does need some significant tweaking. Also, at the same time, there also needs to be some sort of monitoring and evaluation as well as regulation, around how, we got this bit of money that we need to spend to develop these businesses. How are we capturing the impact? What is the strategy to help build and support these businesses? So currently, there's not a lot of regulation in that particular area. Anybody can start a business tomorrow and say, I'm a SME development specialist or business coach or whatever it might be, and the corporate, can potentially just give that money to anybody to then grow and develop SMEs. So I think there certainly needs to be a little bit more regulation. And then on the monitoring and evaluation side, there's a tool that we built. It's called MO360, where we then put the entrepreneurs in this particular tool. We understand what their gaps are. We then provide them interventions and support, but then we capture that impact in a way that the corporates can see, right? So I think currently the way that the structure is set up is that, I could run a business development program and then just throw out stats afterwards to say, I created X amount of employment. Sure. I grew, the business by X, and, how is that being checked or verified? And that's not happening at the moment.
Isn't the big thing that you want a big company to have relationships with smaller companies who are the suppliers, and through those relationships, help those suppliers grow? And that's far more important than any kind of funding. It's the actual business, it's the relationship, It's the growing, it's the sitting in a car on a long journey together because you both have to go and look at a plant in Oudtshoorn. It's that kind of stuff.
Yeah, correct. And I mean, that's always, when we look at small businesses, they're always asking for two things, right? How do we get more market access and how do we get potentially more funding? And you rightly touched on building the relationship is your sort of, is the main thing around market access, right? Like you're saying, you build a relationship with your supplier, you then hold their hand, you then say, okay, what do they need to scale and grow? Interestingly enough, the other thing that we're seeing is very much on the personal mastery or personal development side of things, right? Because the way we approach business development support, and actually a lot of the sector currently just looks at the business and says, hey, what's the gaps in the business? How do we plug that? Is it a marketing? Is it a sales? Is it a truck or whatever it might be? Well, whereas for us, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs where we actually need to focus on the individual themselves because they're the one that needs to make that business sustainable or is going to take it to the next level of growth. And so, especially in our country and when we look at small black-owned businesses, there are certain areas that, when focusing on that, so for example, we can say like, how to set goals and, goals and visualization techniques, changing their mindset, putting in certain developmental or personal developmental areas to help them to evolve because then they will start to see their business differently and not think of it as, or operate their business looking at the bank statement, right? Okay, I got this amount of money, I'm going to spend it. So there needs to be a mindset shift. And then, like you said, yes, building the relationship, with your existing customers, the market access component, and then the funding can come later, right? I mean, once the relationship is there, once people see that you're serious about business, there's actually a lot of funding available.
Jamil Khan, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Co-founder of Unconventional CA. Well, your thoughts on that? I mean, so many of these programs, the intentions are there, but 20 billion rand is a ton of money. Got to be ways to improve our return on that investment. 9 minutes to 7.
Last orders coming through during your drive home or at midnight. Your customers check out whenever, wherever. With seamless payment integration and over 18 ways to get paid, PayFast by Network is built to keep up. And when it's time to grow, funding with Easy Advance helps you take the next step. Always open for late nights, for early starts, for you. Sign up today at payfast.io. PayFast has partnered with TimeBank to offer funding to your business.
Every day, most of us spend an hour planning, prepping, and stressing over what's for dinner. That's around 29,200 hours of your life spent running from grocery store, the kitchen, to the fridge, to the stove. Why not spend that time running for yourself? Or towards something you love doing? And let You Cook handle dinner. Delivered, prepped, and ready to cook. So, choose You Cook and take back some me time. Visit youcook.co.za to find out how.
Small businesses are anything but small. They're the backbone of our communities, the dreamers, the doers, the ones who keep Mzansi moving forward. That's why 702 and Capitec Business Banking are putting them in the spotlight. Every Thursday between 6 and 8 p.m., catch Small Business Focus with Capitec, where we showcase the hustle, heart, and the secrets to thriving in today's economy. Your vision matters, and with Capitec, you're never building it alone. Small Business Focus with Capitec, the business bank for everyone. Thursdays between 6 and 8 p.m. on 702. Capitec Bank is an authorized FSP 46669.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking, proud sponsor of South African Auto Week 2025.
Well, I came clean at the start of the show about my coffee snobbery. I'm glad to say that I don't seem to be alone in that. And normally, I would kind of ignore a holiday about a beverage, but somehow Coffee Day, or International Coffee Day, maybe does deserve a mention. I mean, one of the consistent figures from Stats SA in the last sort of year or so has been the dramatic increase in coffee prices. Coffee inflation's been about 17% year on year for perhaps the last 12 months or so. Elizabeth Kachangi is the marketing lead for coffee at Nestle. Elizabeth, good evening. I imagine with very high coffee prices, we all rely on it, we all need it, but I imagine it's been quite a tough time for you.
Good evening, Stephen, and thank you so much, and happy International Coffee Day.
Yes, we have realized that coffee prices have been increasing globally over the last few years. But what is interesting is that the consumer behavior has also changed. Instead of us seeing a decline in consumption, we are actually seeing consumers adapting to new ways of purchasing their products. So there are those ones who are choosing to purchase smaller packs in order to buy options that are cost effective for them. And there are also those ones who are choosing to buy larger packs so that they can maximize on the value. So as I mentioned, global prices, Stephen, have been rising over the past years, and there are several interconnected factors that have led to this. One of the major ones is the climate change that is affecting Brazil. This has negatively impacted production and has led to reduced yields and supply shortages. Secondly, we are also seeing a growing demand for coffee in non-traditional markets in countries like China, where consumption has gone on the rise. This surge in demand has also put additional pressure on the global supply. Thirdly, we are seeing the associated costs of coffee production, this is labor, fertilizers, and transport, have increased. And the supply disruptions that we experienced during COVID-19 have also aggravated these costs.
And
change in foreign exchange has also impacted coffee prices. As you know, coffee price is actually based on the dollar.
So, Elizabeth, I mean, is this a sustained increase? I mean, do coffee prices stay where they are or go even higher? Or could we find actually new places start growing it? The fact that there are new markets means that people are finding cheaper ways to produce it, et cetera, and the price starts to stabilize or even come down.
So as we know, Stephen, inflation will continue to affect everyone across the value chain. At a global level, global warming remains a significant concern. So underscoring the urgent need for actions that are aimed towards achieving net carbon neutrality so that we can safeguard our crops, particularly those in the tropical belt. So as Nestle, we have developed a comprehensive net zero emission strategy, which is being successfully implemented in South Africa. And to address coffee production directly, we will begin local coffee production in our region, positioning South Africa and Africa as key players in the coffee sector.
Where are you actually going to be growing it? I have a memory that there might have been a coffee plantation in South Africa before. I might just be making it up. Where are you going to be growing this coffee?
So we're not going to be, what I said is we are going to have production happening in South Africa to us. Yes. We are going to localize the production in South Africa.
Okay, so you'll be bringing in the beans and then doing everything from there. When the beans come in, how much work needs to be done on them before you sell them?
There's a lot of work that needs to be done from a manufacturing process where we actually now need to process the beans and then do freeze drying, depending on whether it's freeze drying or spray drying. Then we get them into jars and get into our consumers, into our shoppers' baskets. So there's a lot of work along the value chain, and all that we support through initiatives that Nestle has in terms of supporting everyone through the value chain and optimizing initiatives to collaborate closely with our partners to ensure that we mitigate the prices and lessen the impact on the consumer.
You made the point that people are buying smaller packs or larger packs to try and sort of protect themselves. They're using different strategies when coffee prices go up. Are people looking at any substitutes? Are you seeing that tea is going up too? I mean, are you seeing that tea volumes, the amount of tea that's being sold is going up? Are you seeing people maybe looking at something else? I mean, I don't know, hot chocolate or something.
So when we look at the coffee category itself, we can see growth within the category. So we are selling more volume, more tonnage that we've been selling over the years. So it continues to grow. So we are getting new consumers into the category who are getting into moving from other categories into coffee. But to manage the inflation and to manage the high cost of pricing, they're choosing either to buy small packs, what I can afford today, and then we have those consumers who will buy in larger packs that will last them for a longer time, and larger packs, as you know, drive more value to the shopper.
Okay. When you look at the outlook, I mean, obviously people have come to rely on coffee. It's a sort of thing. But it wasn't like this 30 years ago. I mean, coffee's been around forever. But it did seem to enter a new phase where suddenly there was a coffee shop everywhere.
Yes, so We've seen this shift in terms of consumption trends. So we are seeing people getting into more instant coffee. There is instant cappuccino and also specialty coffees that are being consumed. So coffee initially was more of a morning ritual, but we've seen this shift. It's more than a morning ritual. So people are relying on coffee to kickstart their day. They're enjoying its aroma. But throughout the day, we can see people continue to consume coffee during meetings, during social gatherings, at dinner with their favorite dessert. So we are seeing people consuming more coffee more often than they would in the past.
Thank you very much indeed, Elizabeth.
And one of the trends we are also seeing is actually now a consumption of cold coffee, which wasn't there in the past.
Sure. Elizabeth Kachangi, thanks very much indeed. Marketing lead for coffee at Nestle. Do appreciate the time. In a moment, in Business Unusual, we'll be looking at issues around diversity and how you sort of manage that in an office environment. Wendy Nola has an incredible story around a family illness and a holiday. And your shapeshifter this evening is Alison Collier, the Managing Director at Endeavour South Africa. Good evening. It's 7 o'clock.
This is EWN.
Good evening, I'm Mikey Molapo. The role parliaments can play to advance multilateralism in the face of growing hegemony has emerged as a strong shared view of G20 representatives at the P20 summit underway in Kleinmond. South Africa's BRICS partners, Brazil, Russia, India and China, have all appealed for greater solidarity and pledged cooperation to tackle the problems, particularly of the global south. Speakers of or their representatives are attending the meeting, which is focused on harnessing parliamentary diplomacy to address global challenges. Lindsay Dentlinger has more.
China's vice chairperson of the Standing Committee on the National People's Congress, Zheng Zhanbang, says China is ready to work with all countries to initiate a new momentum for global development. Seemingly a response to new trade tariffs imposed by the United States, Zheng has also appealed to the World Trade Organization to ensure a non-discriminatory trade environment.
The world needs justice, not hegemony, and needs fairness, not bullying.
Meanwhile, chairman of the Russian Senate's Foreign Affairs Committee, Konstantin Kosachev, has defended criticism of new financial institutions like the BRICS Development Bank, saying they are designed to give developing countries equal access to financing.
All of these are not instruments of competition, but rather effective depoliticized mechanism for supporting the countries in need.
National Assembly Speaker Toka Didiza says collective action is needed to challenge the decline of multilateralism that is threatening the world order. Lindsay Dentlinger, Eyewitness News, Kleinmond.
The Matlanga Commission of Inquiry has indicated it will not respond to queries on whether it reached out to Natim Tetwa to appear as a witness before the Commission. South Africa's ambassador to France was found dead at a hotel in Paris yesterday. Investigations surrounding the circumstances of his death are ongoing. In his testimony 2 weeks ago, KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi accused Mthethwa of politically interfering in policing matters in 2011 when he was police minister. Mkhwanazi claims Mthethwa blocked a move to criminally charge former crime intelligence boss Richard Mdluli, who stands accused of abusing his powers and misusing the Secret Service account, otherwise known as the Slush Fund. Matlanga Commission spokesperson Jeremy Michaels would not be drawn to comment on the matter.
We're not going to be commenting at all about Ambassador Mthethwa's passing, except to say that we pass our sincere condolences to his family.
Meanwhile, the Commission did not sit today after its key witness, crime intelligence boss Dumsani Khumalo, left the venue due to ill health. The Commission will resume its public hearings on October 13th, citing the break as due to the unavailability of Commissioner Sesi Baloyi, who will be attending to duties as a member of the Judicial Service Commission. Gauteng Transport Authority Interim CEO Tshepo Khobe has urged transport stakeholders to have a holistic approach in integrating technology in the industry. Khobe made the comments at the Smart Mobility Africa Summit in Sandton today. As the country commemorates Transport Month, industry players have gathered at the two-day summit to discuss some challenges and investment opportunities for the sector. Ndokozo Khumalo has more.
Industry leaders from Africa and beyond gathered here at the Sandton Convention Centre today for the Smart Mobility Africa Summit to find solutions and ways to improve the urban mobility sector. Speaking at the summit, Interim CEO of Gauteng Transport Authority Tshepo Khobe urged attendees to remember that in facilitating change, it never happens in silos.
When you think about digitizing, and MTS will talk to it, when you think about removing cash in a taxi rank, You can't think of removing the cash only off the taxi. You have to think about what we call the taxi rank ecosystem.
He adds that all innovators who want to bring digitization to the public transport sector must consult with the relevant stakeholders. Ndogozo Khumalo, Eyewitness News.
Passenger Rail Agency PRASA says Capetonians will have full train services running on its busy Central Line from next month. The Central Line was brought to its knees by illegal occupation of railway tracks and infrastructure vandalism just before the COVID-19 pandemic. It's the busiest train corridor in the Western Cape, transporting more than 600,000 passengers daily during peak times. Over the years, PRASA has been working to restore train services in the province. Ndutuzelo Nene has more.
PRASA Regional Manager Raymond Maseko says out of the 21 train stations on the Central Line, only Lenteghier, Mitchells Plain and Kapteinsklip do not have train access. Maseko gave an update on the recovery of this corridor at the launch of Mobility Month in Cape Town today.
These 3 stations, we will be testing the first trains now in October. Then we will write to our regulator to come and do the test and come and check whether we have recovered the line to the appropriate standard. But Capetonians will start utilizing the trains from the Mitchells Plain side in November of this year.
Maseko says this will conclude the trains and stations recovery program for the Western Cape. Ndutuzelo Nene, Eyewitness News.
And the South African government has called for the protection of the global Summit flotilla sailing through a volatile area of the Mediterranean Sea. The civilian-led humanitarian mission is heading to Gaza with urgently needed aid. It has reportedly come under surveillance by unidentified drones, raising fears of possible military intervention. The International Relations Department has called for compliance with international law. Spokesperson Crispin Piri.
We urge utmost restraint and caution against any unilateral actions that could escalate the situation or endanger human life.
Government has further warned that any use of force would constitute a breach of international legal norms and fundamental human rights.
The safety, security, and physical integrity of all unarmed participants aboard the flotilla, including South African citizens, are of paramount importance.
Gold's trading at $3,871.20 an ounce. The rand's at 17.21 to the dollar, at 23.20 to the pound, at 20.19 to the euro. Brent crude oil's at $65.59 a barrel.
In Boksburg, traveling towards Brakpan, we still have roadworks slowing down traffic in N17 eastbound. This is between Rondebolt and Carnival City. Driving through Rudeport, heading towards Leratong, there's also slow-moving traffic on Randfontein Road. That's approaching Adcock Road. And in the mother city, we're still dealing with that accident scene. N2 inbound, approaching Raupenburg, slowing down traffic.
A look at your weather. Clear skies in store for Gauteng tomorrow. Joburg will drop to overnight lows of 13 degrees and peak at highs of 27. Pretoria is at 14, also at highs of 27 degrees. Vereeniging is at 12 and 28. A partly cloudy start for Cape Town, becoming fine with fresh southeasterly winds at a low of 12 and a high of 18 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News this hour: the role parliaments can play to advance multilateralism in the face of growing hegemony has emerged as a strong shared view of G20 representatives at the P20 summit underway in Claremont.
EWN, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking, proud sponsor of South African Auto Week 2025. 8 minutes now after 7 the time. Good to have you along with us on The Money Show tonight. Well, we'll talk about the case for cultural sensitivity in business in a moment. Advita Naidu is the Africa MD at Jack Hammer Global. It's such an interesting debate because there's such a big pushback against it coming from the US. I don't know if you've ever had this issue. It might have happened to you or someone you know. You're in a position where the sort of holiday of a lifetime, the dream holiday is coming, and suddenly someone close to you, not someone who's coming on the holiday, but someone close to you, is so desperately ill that you just can't go. What happens? Well, Wendy Nola, your consumer ninja, has a story about that tonight. And your shapeshifter this evening is Alison Collier. the managing director at Endeavour South Africa. She's someone who's worked pretty much everywhere. SAB Miller, those were at one point two separate companies at different stages. Worked in Singapore, worked in New York, worked on things as diverse as sort of selling beverages and iced tea and managing medicine supply chains across Africa. So someone who's very interesting. Looking forward to that conversation with Alison Collier from 7:30 this evening. You know the number, 011 883 0702, 021 446 0567, and voice notes on 072 702 1702.
702. 702.
Stephen is on the Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
Well, so much talk in the last week about AGOA, which formally ended last night, overnight our time. And yes, there's talk about maybe it'll be reinstated, maybe it won't. In a way, it kind of doesn't matter. And we're all trying to sort out a trade deal with the United States. By we all, I mean South Africa and so many other countries too. But it's all so complicated now by the shutdown of the US federal government, and we don't know how long this will go on for. It will be the most important thing that takes place in Washington for the next little while, and when the government does come back, and one presumes that it will at some point, there'll then be a big fight over the blame game and how it all plays out. And the point I'm trying to make is that all of this is pushing the gold price up and the dollar price down. So the dollar is weaker than it's been for quite some time against the rand. I think we're 17.20 or so against the dollar at the moment. And I was reminded of something that was said earlier this week. Siboniso Nkomalo from Old Mutual, he's the chief investment officer there, just making the point earlier this week that if at the beginning of January you'd bought in the US, you would have had a 5% return in the 9 months. If you'd bought on the JSE, you would have had a 30% return. And this is just the index. And this really shows you what happens, and this is all in dollars, by the way. This is what happens when the dollar gets weaker and the gold price and, to an extent, platinum prices go up as dramatically as they have. Just goes to show you never really can tell what's going to happen in investing. That's what makes it really so interesting.
The Money Show.
Business Unusual.
There was a strange scene yesterday in the US. The Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, telling the leadership of the US military he wanted them to focus on his grooming. I'm really not making that up. He also said that women who wanted to be in combat would be held to the same physical standards as men. He also said the US military had become, his phrase, too woke. Essentially, I suppose he wants a military that looks a particular way. And this is part of a big fight back in the US against issues like cultural sensitivity. Advita Naidu is the Africa MD at Jack Hammer Global. Advita, good evening to you. From your research, treating everyone in exactly the same way is not actually the best way to run a business, is it?
Sadly not. And I think, we've just been through Heritage Month and all the posts on LinkedIn and in media. They've reminded us that workplaces aren't neutral spaces. They're made up of real people with different cultures, languages, and lived experiences. And when leaders ignore that, they miss out on innovation or collaboration because people don't like to give their best when they feel erased or reduced to one thing, or like you say, broadly homogenized. They want to be appreciated for all the facets of their beings. And it's not about being politically correct. There will be business impact like employee retention and engagement when people feel unconsidered or disrespected.
There's a way of understanding and being sensitive to. There's also a way in which you can tell the person who says they like everybody doesn't really mean it. How do you sort of, I suppose there's a word everybody uses at this point, sometimes badly used, but authentic. How do you make sure that actually it really is something that's going to be properly effective? Let me put this another way. How do you make sure it's done properly?
So, unfortunately, companies do love optics, the celebration prize and the token greeting in another language on the website. But actual sensitivity is in how decision gets made, whose voices are heard in the strategy, whether policies allow for flexibility for cultural needs, whether promotions are equitable. So, some practical examples that people can drill into. I think people get tied up in policy and what strategy says, but they don't think about how it shows up in practice. So, as an example, companies love the Heritage Day dress up, but will still enforce dress codes that penalize other traditional attire the rest of the year. Or managers, look askance at people who dress like that differently on other days. Or firms will talk about Women in Women's Month, but then maternity and parental leave policies are outdated, or menopause and menstruation are seen as inconveniences and taboos that don't get accommodated for. And if your policies don't match your actual campaigns, that's not authentic. That's not real.
There's and I think everybody's felt this at some point. You'll walk into an office and your boss will see you, and you can see just from their expression, no matter how professional they may try and be or how they try and hide it, but you can see they don't like what you're wearing or they don't like something about it. And it goes deeper than just the fact that they support Chiefs and you support Pirates and it's a Pirates shirt. It's about something else. How do you get around that? Because that can be quite tricky.
I think the danger is that a lot of leaders hide behind something like, I didn't mean it, but intent doesn't erase the impact of the way they act. And that kind of bias or that kind of behavior, whether they're doing it intentionally or unconsciously or not, it does cost companies something. Sometimes it means talent goes elsewhere, and it has to become something that gets called out. And once there's a spotlight shone on it, there's really no excuse anymore.
I mean, some people might just be not used to something different that they've just never seen before or never expected to see in, Santon. That can be. I mean, I'm not trying to defend them, but I am just saying that it can be human sometimes to be shocked by something, or let me use a different phrase, to be taken by surprise.
I suppose so. And I suppose then it's important to separate genuine curiosity from those sorts of examples. If you're seeking to understand somebody's lived experience, that's very different from making assumptions about what or who they are based on their backgrounds. And sometimes these sorts of reactions can come across as little microaggressions, unconscious or not. And microaggressions are death by 1,000 cuts. It's the offhanded comments like, oh, your English is so good, or we don't see color around here, which may sound progressive on the surface, but it really erases lived experience. And again, feels harmless to the person saying it, but sends a clear message to somebody else that says, oh, you're a little bit different from the way we are here. And you multiply that by weeks or months or years, and suddenly you've got disengaged people, low trust, a culture that has the potential to become very toxic.
Yeah, I mean, it's children from all parts of the country, all parts of our society going into a school and having a sort of very kind of old-fashioned English kind of Enid Blyton book read to them and nothing else. It's that kind of thing. How do you make sure that managers don't do that? And I mean, there'll be workshops and there'll be this and that, but do you really have to work at it?
Do have to work at it, and everything needs to be fit for purpose. I think at the topmost level, it does require policy review to look at whether it's fit for purpose for your workforce and does it take into account everybody's needs. I mean, the thing about respecting cultural beliefs and practices needs to be embedded with examples. So, for example, in some cultures, bereavement means attending multiple ceremonies over days or weeks, and our labor law at the highest level may only allow 3 days of family responsibility leave, which may not be enough. But a company that pays attention to something like this and doesn't force employees to take unpaid leave or use sick days, that goes beyond what the legal minimum is, will earn loyalty. And it just requires attention to these micro examples to make sure that they're accommodated for. And yes, sometimes they're going to be edge cases, but applying a level of judgment that doesn't just say, well, this is our policy and we're going to stick to it fairly rigidly, means that we're being culturally sensitive.
For global companies that are operating around the world, I mean, there are plenty of them here, and it's one of my favorite questions to ask people who've worked in different companies around the world and are now working here. What's one of the big differences? And I mean, I remember speaking to someone who's from a different country and asked what's one of the big differences, and she said, well, whenever I get invited to an event here, I'm asked what it's not presumed that my partner looks like me but is of the opposite gender, and I can basically tick a box for what I would like to eat rather than just presume that I, will eat meat and that's that. That's a big difference. But for a global company, how do they need to manage all of this? It can be different in different places. And yet, because of the way people travel now, actually offices can look more and more the same wherever they are.
That's right. And this happens to be one of my favorite topics to address. So I think, the global frameworks, they need to be about translation, taking the intent of a global strategy or global policy, but grounding it in local nuance. Otherwise, you're not being inclusive. You are just being fairly colonial, like you say. And a couple of examples that we've dealt with, a global corporate headquartered in Europe insisted that South African offices observe only Christian holidays and the European summer break, ignoring our multi-faith context and the fact that our summer holiday is in December. And again, with enough attention paid to it or objection from the local population, it means that head offices, be they in London, Europe, wherever they are, need to accommodate for local nuances and other things like transport allowances. We had a European client who has things like bicycle allowances, which are very popular in Europe, but no transport stipends in South Africa where commuting challenges are very different. And if you intend to do business in a country, then it is incumbent upon you to investigate all the cultural nuances that you should be paying attention to, because at the end of the day, cultural sensitivity in the workplace isn't about tiptoeing around people. It's about building businesses that work in the real world.
Advita Naidoo, thanks so much. Africa MD at Jack Hammer Global. Really appreciate it on Business Unusual tonight.
The Money Show.
Consumer Ninja.
Can you imagine the nightmare of this, right? You've got the big family holiday. It's all planned. You're going to meet this person in Lisbon and that person in Beijing. And on the way back, you're going to see the aunt in Nigeria. And when you do that, just as you're about to go, someone who is very dear to you suddenly falls ill and you actually can't leave because you may not see them again. Well, this is a story that Wendy Nola has for you tonight as our Consumer Ninja. Wendy, good evening. What happened here?
Hi, Stephen. So, Neela of Malbotten, Joburg, she booked a trip to Greece and Istanbul with her son. It was a mother-son trip. The husband had projects on the go and couldn't join them. And so the plan was that they were leaving on the 6th of September. This is now last year, returning on the 21st. And the husband was staying behind. So on the 13th of August, less than a week, just a few days after she paid Penn Travel 96,000 Rand for that trip, and more than 3 weeks before the due departure date, her husband was diagnosed with serious heart disease and he required an emergency quadruple major heart surgery. So obviously there was no way that she was going to be going, right? It clashed with the trip. You're not going to leave your spouse under those circumstances. And so she immediately contacted the travel agency to cancel the trip. She was asked to provide a medical certificate, which she did. And then the company said, well, we're not going to pay you back that 96,000 Rand in full. The issue is that if you take out travel insurance, they will cover such a scenario.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, whenever I've ever looked at travel insurance, it has all of that there.
Yes. So unfortunately, when she was sitting with the travel agent, she was asked, do you want to buy this policy? And she thought, oh, it looks a bit expensive. Let me explore with other means. And of course, her husband fell ill days later, and so that never happened because the trip wasn't going to happen.
Yes, so I mean, now that I think about it, like I would pay for the trip, and then just before I travel, probably get the travel insurance.
This is one of the takeouts from this is that, I mean, I'm traveling to New Zealand in March, and I haven't thought to take out insurance yet because you take it for the trip, right? Now, what if I had to cancel if my partner fell ill also, I was unable to go. I felt unable to go. I'd also want my money back. So here's the thing. The Consumer Protection Act does give consumers the right to a full refund if they cancel an advance booking due to, and this is the wording, because of the death or hospitalization of the person for whom or for whose benefit the booking was made. It doesn't mention anything about an immediate family member falling ill, right? It's only when you have travel insurance. Okay, but what interested me in this case is, I should also say that the Act says that if you cancel an advance booking, you are entitled to a refund, but they're obviously going to be able to give you one that takes into account, if you cancel very late and they haven't got very little opportunity to resell that booking, then your refund is going to be small. But the point is, under these circumstances of death and hospitalization, you should get it in full. Anyway, so what interested me, as I said, was that Neela took her case to the Consumer Goods and Services Ombudsman because she felt it wasn't fair, that the Act required fair service. And the Ombud came back and said, while the cancellation section of the CPA that I've just read out doesn't include the words direct family members, nothing precludes the company, precludes the Ombud rather, from requesting that the supplier consider the complainant's request in light of the circumstances. And the Ombud felt that seeing as the family member in question was the spouse, it would be reasonable to conclude that any person in that position would not proceed with the booking and would rather remain with the spouse due to the medical condition that they had. And in addition, that she'd given 3 weeks' notice prior to travel and had paid only days before she'd cancelled. And that also a blanket no refund policy was not acceptable in terms of the provisions of the CPA. So on all those bases, they asked that a full refund be made, and Pan Travel said that the company had a no refund policy, and as did their third-party suppliers because they're the intermediary, and that also then they said the package was tailor-made for Neela. And therefore, the Act precludes them having to issue a refund. And the Ombud said, we don't agree with you. And that's when communication ended, right? So yeah, that was when she turned to me to say, I feel this is grossly unfair.
Sure.
And you help.
So off you go to the travel agency. I imagine being Wendy Nola, they took your call. What happened after that?
It's an email, which takes a little bit more time. But yes, the CEO, Paulo de Oliveira, came back to me to say, he started off by saying, we're very sorry this happened, very unfortunate. We did offer her travel insurance, but she declined. And then they went on to say that they actually had recovered about half of what she'd paid, so around 40-something thousand. But by signing the contract as she did, she'd bound herself to the third party's terms and conditions, i.e. no refund. And that they had urged her to take out travel insurance. We've covered why she didn't. He then said when she cancelled, which was days after she'd paid in full, the company did its best to recover funds from the third-party companies, and we did manage to get back just over 40,000 rand, mainly from the airlines, and a credit from one hotel amounting to 16,500 rand. In addition, he said, given the distressing circumstances, Pen Travel will waive our own cancellation fees and refund 100% of the commission earned on the booking.
So
and
I
they've got this money.
Yeah. So what's bizarre is that unless you had emailed, they got that money back, but they would not have refunded it to her unless you'd emailed.
No, I did go back to Neela and say, you didn't mention this part. And she said, yes, it was a lower amount. They said about 35,000. And the reason she didn't want to accept it was that then she felt that she'd waive her rights to the full claim.
Sure, right.
I said to her, what now? And she said, well, it's been referred by the Ombud to the National Consumer Commission and that might go to the tribunal. She's considering her options. But she strongly feels, she paid 96,000 rand. 4 days later, cancelled. How can it be reasonable for her to have had to sacrifice that much? So the moral of the story is, consider travel insurance, and not only just before you travel, because you want to be covered in this circumstances. If you fell ill, or if someone for whom you paid fell ill, you would get the money back because that's according to the Act. But this immediate spouse and a sort of natural situation. I wish the Act had actually included direct family because that would have made things a lot easier. But you have to have travel insurance for that. And also some travel companies definitely will cancel. They have it in their terms and conditions that if it's a direct member of your family that needs to be hospitalized or who dies, you will get a full refund. So consider that the worst may happen and interrogate the terms and conditions so that you go in eyes wide open, knowing what you're in for should you cancel.
Wendy Nola always say, read the fine print. Wendy, thank you. Your Consumer Ninja. Enjoy New Zealand. Don't forget to pack the World Cup. Wendy Nola is our Consumer Ninja on The Money Show.
Coming up,
The Aubrey Masango Show
on 702
and Cape Talk.
Wendy, just make sure you bring it back. 28 minutes after 7. Aubrey Masango, good evening. Lots to come tonight in a sort of half an hour's time. What's coming up on the show?
Absolutely. The big stories of the day. The verdict in the Julius Malema case.
Big story, eh?
Big story. And, of course, he's been found guilty. I'm sure that our listeners are going to have a lot to say about that. But in the first hour of the show, Dr. Frank Magwegwe, Head of Financial Wellness at Nedbank, joins me to talk about the relationship between money. So it's a bit of an extension of the money show, between money and your mental wellness. October is mental health awareness here in South Africa. And Dr. Frank is going to be making that connection. In the second hour of the show, in our Weird and Wonderful feature, we talk about the rapture. You'll remember that...
TikTok. I missed it. Did it happen? No.
Well, you remember that it was a big story a few weeks ago. And we get Dr. Sandiswa Lerato Kobe, who's a lecturer in theology at UNISA, to tell us exactly what the story is with regards to the rapture.
I was left unraptured, I've got to tell you.
Yeah?
Maybe it was just me.
Yeah, maybe you stayed behind and the saints went, eh?
Oh!
Stanley Beckett joins us in the third hour of the show. We've been looking at the book, The Psychology of Money, right? Morgan Housel's book, and we're looking at chapter 11 of that book today, and we are looking at the relationship between something that's rational versus something that's reasonable.
Yeah.
And something can be very rational but not necessarily reasonable, and maybe not very good at being implemented. And then, of course, the final hour of the show is an open line, and that's the show tonight.
Thanks very much indeed. Aubrey Masango with you from 8 o'clock this evening. Don't forget Alison Collier. She's your shapeshifter. She's the managing director at Endeavour South Africa. She'll be on your radio in a few moments. It's just gone 7:30. Marky, good evening. Political dysfunction in the United States.
That's right, and that's where we begin this evening. Good evening. Thanks, Stephen. The U.S. government shutdown is continuing after senators rejected a plan to resolve an acrimonious funding standoff between President Donald Trump and Democrats in Congress. Efforts to bring a quick end to the U.S. government shutdown floundered today when senators rejected the plan. With the government out of money after Trump and lawmakers failed to agree on a deal to keep the lights on, many federal departments and agencies have been closed since midnight. There was no clear path out of the impasse, while agencies warned that the 15th government shutdown since 1981 would halt the release of a closely watched September employment report, slow air travel, suspend scientific research, withhold pay from U.S. troops, and lead to the furlough of 750,000 federal workers at a daily cost of $400 million. Trump has also threatened irreversible mass layoffs. Back on home soil in the Western Cape, police have been conducting raids across Cape Town in connection with fraud and corruption involving municipal contracts. In total, the tenders amount to 1.6 billion rand, but the extent of the fraud is yet to be determined. There have been search and seizure operations at 26 locations since yesterday morning. They targeted businesses, the homes of municipal officials, and locations linked to individuals and entities that were awarded contracts by the city of Cape Town. The police's Andrew Chart says the raids follow information from a whistleblower and investigations.
The operation, which stems from whistleblower information and preliminary investigations, is aimed at securing crucial evidence to establish the scope of alleged irregularities. SAPSIS reiterates its commitment to fighting corruption and protecting public resources and urges the public to allow investigators the necessary space to conduct their work.
The City of Cape Town's Lutando Jalibongo.
In line with the city's zero-tolerance approach to fraud and corruption, City Forensic Services took swift action to assess and report the matter to SAPS, who then undertook a search and seizure operation. Operations took place at various addresses, including business premises, municipal buildings, and private residences. More details will be made available by SAPS as the investigation progresses.
The Gauteng government says it's finalizing an alternative site for the Acacia police station in Tshwane to improve staff accommodation and enhance policing. Premier Panyaza Lesufi, along with Provincial Police Commissioner Tomi Mtombeni and city officials, met earlier today to finalize details related to the new site and plan the relocation process. This follows Lesufi's oversight visit to the police station last week, where he expressed dissatisfaction with the state of the facility. Spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga says the police station has long struggled with limited resources, adding that it's among 52 identified priority police stations in the province.
Premier Lesufi reaffirmed the provincial government's commitment to working with the South African Police Service leadership, the city of Tshwane, as well as other stakeholders to ensure that the community of Acacia and surrounding areas receive a better policing service as soon as possible.
And And more details have been revealed about the partial building collapse in New York today. It's rather suspected that there was a gas explosion at the residential building in the Bronx. Fire Commissioner Robert Tucker says everyone has been evacuated with no injuries reported.
We ran our dogs over this pile of bricks that is behind us, which is the structure that collapsed. It is a ventilation shaft connected to the boiler, which collapsed. We believe that's where the explosion occurred.
A look at your weather. A fine day in store for Gauteng tomorrow. Temperatures will drop to overnight lows between 12 and 14 degrees and peak at alternating highs of 27 and 28 degrees. A partly cloudy start for Cape Town, becoming fine with fresh southeasterly winds at a low of 12 and a high of 18 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News. The U.S. government shutdown is continuing after senators rejected a plan to resolve an acrimonious funding standoff between President Donald Trump and Democrats in Congress.
One degree defines you as a master of business, the MBA. The life-changing Gibbs MBA empowers you to lead an organization or start your own business within the dynamic African context. Choose from 90 electives and 8 focus areas: general management, entrepreneurship, consulting, manufacturing, digital, humane leadership, healthcare, and climate leadership. For our next information session, go to gibbs.co.za/MBA. Gibbs is a Triple Crown internationally accredited business school in Ilovo, Sandton.
It is said that listening to Mozart could boost intelligence. So we at R&B bought this extended radio spot to give you 30 seconds of Mozart just to get some thinking done. That was nice, huh? Just some time to think. Well, that is precisely what we do at R&B. Invest in the time to think of smarter solutions for our clients. R&B. Solutionists love company. R&B is a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Mr. Govinda, congrats on the retirement. You just sold your car to We Buy Cars. Tell us about it.
Yes, it just gathered dust in the garage, so I exchanged it for cold hard cash. Now my wife and I can enjoy a stress-free retirement.
Retiring the car as you retire. Nice. So why We Buy Cars?
It was so quick. They came over to our house to do the evaluation, and we sold it the same day. Tops, man.
Okay, so now you got even more time on your hands, eh?
Exactly.
We Buy Cars. Geared for your next chapter. Geared for you.
702 with Stephen Grootes.
Email him on stephen@702.co.za.
On the next Money Show, Andreas van der Horst, Portfolio Manager at Mazi Asset Management, and Chantel Marks, Head of Equity Research at F&B Wealth and Investments, join us as this week's principals in our investment school. They'll focus on the importance of investing in quality global companies, good for your health and wealth creation. Loncedum Twentwe, Managing Director at Vantage Advisory, has some big advice for small businesses. Also, see Pumulele Zondi, the latest from the world of tech and gadgets.
The Money Show.
Shapeshifters.
Well, it's interesting to see the different careers and different places in which someone can work. And tonight's Shapeshifter is such a good example of that. Alison Collier is the MD at Endeavour. Endeavour is an entrepreneurship accelerator, a company that basically helps smaller companies to scale up. She's currently based in New York, spends time here, does all sorts of different things, and has had a very long career pretty much in this space. Alison, good evening, and thanks for agreeing to spend some time with us as our Shapeshifter on The Money Show.
Stephen, it's great to be here with you, and thanks so much for having me.
You started in South Africa, and I spent some time on your LinkedIn profile this afternoon. But wow, you've worked pretty much everywhere. You've worked in lots of different places. When you were growing up, was that part of what you wanted to do, to work here in South Africa, to work in Switzerland and Singapore and New York? I mean, was that kind of something that was driving you already?
Yeah, I mean, I must say, growing up in South Africa, and I matriculated in '96, so South Africa looked very different then to what it looks like now. And it was really apparent to me when I was at school and university that there was a lot going on in the outside world that we just didn't get to see in South Africa. We had a lot to learn from the other more developed markets. And so it was always something that I'd wanted to do after I'd got a business degree at UCT, to spend time overseas and then bring those learnings back to South Africa and build and grow business here, just because there's so much opportunity in our country.
No, sure. I mean, and there is. Where were you growing up in South Africa? What kind of community were you growing up in?
So I was born and raised in Cape Town, but I want to say come from a family of entrepreneurs. So my father and grandfather, and on both sides of the family, all set up their own businesses and ran their own businesses. So it was always something that I was interested in, and very fortunate that dinner time conversations were about what was going on in the financial world, both in South Africa and overseas. And that definitely, got me interested in the business space. And then I want to say the rest is history.
So many of the people we speak to as a shapeshifter have some kind of influence from the family, something, not just something that happened, but that we'll talk about kind of growing up in it, a culture of innovation almost. So it was a bit like that for you. This was what you did. You started your own business. You made your own work.
So I want to say I didn't necessarily start my own business by myself. I always worked with others to set up new businesses together with them, whether it be here in South Africa or internationally. And also something that always struck me when I was growing up here in South Africa was that the South Africans are so much more resilient. And I want to say that saying, a boer maak 'n plan. We just do it every day. And living and spending time in markets like in Europe and Southeast Asia, we're so fortunate with that's how we all just work as South Africans. And I think we take it for granted. But it's the most incredible advantage that we've got as South Africans, because in the business world, that just puts you streets ahead of everyone else. And the work ethic that we've got in our country is also remarkable, combined with how innovative people are and always willing to make a plan. And likewise, life is much more tough in South Africa than, many of the other countries that I lived and worked in after I graduated. And I want to say South Africa, we've got so much talent and we've got so much opportunity, and just with the right, amount of capital, and I want to say the right policies in place from our government, our country can just be, and it's the most incredible place to live, climate-wise. So we've just got a wonderful opportunity in front of us, and a lot of those items are in our control, the policies and how we work, overall as a system. So yeah, there's a lot of upside here.
It's a very, very interesting comment, actually. If we got things going in the right direction, we might see people being able to, because people are prepared to work so hard and make a plan, as you put it, we might start to see growth very quickly. You worked, and Alison, I do need to touch on this. You worked at McKinsey in the early 2000s, and so many people of our generation, you and I are roughly the same generation. I'm a little bit older than you, but I knew people who, when they got a job at McKinsey, they were so excited, and I could understand why. It was kind of like a ticket, and it wasn't just a ticket to, a job somewhere else. It was a ticket to learn things, to understand things in a different way. And it was such a good opportunity to learn. I think, though, and I think correctly, if you use the phrase McKinsey in South Africa now, it has a very different ring to it. Has that, everything that happened around McKinsey, did that tarnish that experience for you? I imagine, like a lot of people, it was very empowering back then. Now it's maybe a bit different.
Yeah, I think what a great question. And I want to say you'll probably hear this from many people that worked at McKinsey. I worked there from 2001 to 2003, and opening one of my first bosses when I was working there was Vikas Segar, who was involved and implicated in the Eskom contract that McKinsey had, which was between 2010 to 2015. And I want to say it was so disappointing for me to see that the office entered into contracts that looked like that. And as well as other corporates in South Africa that, on the wrong side of contracts. It's horrific. I want to say, though, when I worked there 2001 to 2003, I was so grateful for the work opportunity, and it was like learning from a fire hose. I was working across Africa doing revenue growth opportunities for one of the largest consumer goods company across the continent in beverages. And, you just it's incomparable, the learning that you get. You definitely do spend a lot of hours at your desk behind your laptop working, but the meetings that you attend and the scope of the business that you see in a very short space of time it's just an amazing learning experience, and I'm very grateful. But back to your sort of first question, the main reason why I joined McKinsey because I knew that if you achieved a certain level in the company, they would sponsor you to do an international MBA. And I always wanted to go and spend time in like I said before, in the international markets, but really have an opportunity to get to know and study with mostly international students that were really interested in business. And so that was primarily my main reason for joining McKinsey, was because there was no ways I could afford to pay for an international MBA, but knew if I did well enough at McKinsey, they would sponsor me to do that, which is fortunately what ended up happening.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best ways to kind of get that qualification, I imagine at the time, if you were here in South Africa, was through McKinsey. It was probably the easiest, the most effective, and you would have, had the benefit of that fire hose of learning, as you put it. You spent a lot of time at SAB and then SAB Miller. So the two separate times, sort of two separate companies. The company went through a bit of quite a big change. Part of it was here, the first part. The second part was actually in the town of Zug in Switzerland. Was there a big difference in the culture of the companies in those places? Even though, I mean, on paper, it was kind of the same company, but actually you were working at it in different times. It changed its name and in different places.
No, I want to say also very interesting, and that was something that struck me enormously when I moved first to London, where I spent a year, and then on to Switzerland. So I spent immediately after, doing an MBA in INSEAD for a year, I came back to South Africa and worked in the strategy role in SAB in Johannesburg and supported a lot of the M&A transactions that SAB was doing at the time. And sort of then fast forward 2 or 3 years, and then 2008, SAB Miller had 28, breweries across 28 different markets, but outside of global treasury, there were no global functions. So it was the natural next step for SAB Miller to look to set up, the global functions. And the first piece, or the piece that's most commercially viable, is a global sourcing or procurement office. So myself and a handful of others first sort of did the work of what it was going to take to set that up, and spent a year in London. And then from there, we saw that we were going to be able to basically hire in the correct resources in the fastest amount of time to build up this global sourcing office we were building if we chose Zug in Switzerland. So that was the reason why we chose Zug in Switzerland. And also comes to this question of culture. So then we were really fortunate. We set it up as a JV initially between Molson Coors and SAB Miller to increase our buying power. And with that, it meant that you, as the JV that was housed in Switzerland, you were backed by two incredibly strong checkbooks from SAB Miller and from Molson Coors, but you could act as an independent office to basically do whatever was the best deal for the overall group, but not being too heavily swayed from each of the parties. So in that, what we did was we first hired in the right talent with the right experience from across the world. So what did the office look like in Zug? We probably had an average age between, it was probably between the ages of 28 and 35, so quite a lot younger than what the office was in SAB. And of course, we had every nationality under the sun. I don't think there were probably, it was hard to not have a country that was represented in our office in Switzerland. It was, and from that, the culture of that office was, yes, it was very hardworking and had all the, the South African elements of, you make a plan and find a solution that's win-win for everyone. And yes, there are rules that are more guidelines than rules, and you can always find a way to do things better. But the openness and the liberalness of the nature of the board meetings and meetings from working with such a cosmopolitan team was very different from how meetings and boardrooms felt back in South Africa. And I must say, I only realized that coming back to South Africa and holding meetings after spending quite some time in Europe, then you really notice the difference. But when you haven't felt the difference, and you don't really know it exists. But yeah, the discussions in the European offices are much more open, and everyone is listened to, and hierarchy didn't count as much. which is different back in South Africa.
Something that maybe we need to learn from them?
I would say definitely yes, but there's a lot that Europeans can learn from South Africans. So I want to say the South African work ethic and the ingenuity and resilience is an absolutely incredible I want to say asset that our country has.
Alison, you moved from booze to tea. Okay, so my kids would say you've been talking enough about what you drink, Dad. Time to talk about what we drink. You moved to Boss Brands. Was it a big change, or was the beverage business just the beverage business?
I want to say in many ways the beverage business is the beverage business when it comes to the economics and commercially how you grow those businesses. Something that I really appreciated moving, into, I want to say, a healthy drink compared to necessarily to alcohol is there's just much more focus just on the business, and events aren't really, or the big parties and all of those things that go with it just isn't a factor. Yes, you have good parties, but it's a very different type of a party versus what you have in the alcohol trade. So, but commercially, it's just the same. No, it's a fun, fast-moving, and an exciting space.
We're speaking to Alison Collier. She's the managing director at Endeavour South Africa. She's had a career in which she's worked in many places around the world. We're discussing that with her. We'll discuss some of what she's done in Africa next, and also a little bit about what Endeavour is trying to do by helping other companies. You're with The Money Show. It's your shapeshifter. It's 10 minutes to 8.
No one will ever understand just how much your car means to you. The way Bumblebee carried you through road trips, or how Ruby Gold has been there for every big moment. This Name Your Car Day 2 October. 702 is teaming up with Stellantis, the global automotive powerhouse behind brands like Citroën, Alfa Romeo, Peugeot, Opel, Jeep and Fiat, to give you a chance to win your share of 20,000 Rand. 20,000 Rand all day on 702. WhatsApp a voice note of your car's name, the story behind it, plus your name and ID number to 072 702 1702. We could call you all day with 5,000 Rand to celebrate your bond. Thanks to Stellantis on 702. TCs and more on primemediaplus.com.
For those 2 a.m. checkouts or the late night shift, for the last minute orders and the beginning of the month rush, for the 9 to 5 that becomes a 5 to 9. You don't clock out, and neither should your payments. Pay fast by network, always open for the dreamers, the doers, for you. From e-commerce to in-store payments and business funding, we have you covered. Sign up today at payfast.io.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA Corporate and Investment Banking, proud sponsor of South African Auto Week 2025.
The Money Show.
Shapeshifters.
Alison Collier is the managing director at Endeavour South Africa. They try and help other companies. We're talking about her career here and around the world. So Alison, you were selling booze, then you were selling tea, and then after that, you went to what's called Project Last Mile. It's about managing supply chains for medicines across our continent. It's really important work. This was before the pandemic. Were you looking for a sort of change in direction, perhaps, at that point? I mean, it is a very different thing.
So maybe just a step back in the work that I want to say, when you're talking about beverages, there's an enormous amount of supply chain focus in beverages, and if you can get your drink to the customer at the right price, and a lot of a drink's content is water, especially when it comes to beer, and the thing. So it's not such a high value product necessarily. So the logistics and the supply chain play a huge role in the value proposition that you can end up offering and the margins that you can generate as a company. So yes, I was definitely looking at that stage after, spending, I want to say 10, 15 years outside of the country always, but working for South African businesses, but internationally. I was looking to spend much more time here in South Africa and using the skills that I'd learned to make a difference. And there was an opportunity to support the last mile delivering chronic medicines across Africa. And it was heavily funded and supported by various beverage businesses which I'd been involved in. So both Coca-Cola, Unilever, and also the Gates Foundation. And that work, it was just using and leveraging the skills that I had from learned from the beverage trade, whether it be beer or iced tea. You're delivering medicines. It's moving things around. So it was a I want to say a wonderful opportunity to be able to do that piece of work, and just did the initial planning of and focused on that work for probably 6 months or so, just agreeing the budgets up front, and then the team led the execution of actually managing through with all the deliveries of those medicines after the contracts had been put in place.
I mean, it also requires the ingenuity that you were speaking of to try and get medicines to some quite difficult places. I mean, there's a sort of famous phrase that pretty much across Africa you can buy a beer. So if you can buy a beer, you should be able to get medicine.
That is exactly what the people have told us across the table. So they said, you seem to get Coke and beer everywhere, so we could definitely get our medicines everywhere. And they're right. Like when there's a will, there's a way, and the logistics exist. You just need to, be very planned and organized about how you get the products moving.
The person
Unfortunately, most of the medicines have got quite a long expiration date, which makes your life much easier.
Yes, no, well, I think now that I think about it, the person who first said it wrote it in a book and may be a member of the board of the organization that you and I have been talking about. Let's move a little bit now to Endeavour South Africa. What do you see your role as? And I sort of paraphrased it as sort of trying to help entrepreneurship and help businesses, but I think it may be a lot more than that.
Yeah, so maybe so what Endeavour is, it's a global organization based out of New York that's here to accelerate the growth of specifically high growth companies in emerging markets around the world. And the reason why Endeavour does that is we know that these high growth entrepreneurial businesses that are building and growing global businesses from their emerging market base, they drive revenue growth, job creation, and they at a much faster rate than the average business. And over and above that, they do that all off the back of private capital, venture capital. So they really are enormously positive and contribute enormously in an enormous positive manner to the local economy and really drive the growth of these emerging markets. So examples of those type of businesses, just to sort of put it in context for the conversation here in South Africa, our portfolio, I think everyone all the listeners will know Time Bank. That's one of the businesses in our portfolio. Then teams like Yoko and Sweep South, Clickatel. I can go through many, many others here. And then across the continent, I think everyone will have heard of Money Point out of Nigeria, or else MNT Halan in Egypt. We also got large presence in Latin America, teams like Creditas and Rappi, and then Middle East, Karim, which was bought by Uber. So it's really these businesses that are high growth tech companies. We actively support those businesses to grow them at a much faster rate to grow the economy. So that's sort of the underlying reason for Endeavour's being. And we've got venture capital funds that we have alongside the sort of network and staff complement of 600 that we've got across 45 offices. We work with 2,900 entrepreneurs across all of our 45 markets, and we've got more than 5,500 mentors in our mentor network, as well as about 550 investors, VC investors globally. And maybe just to also explain the caliber of the mentors that are sitting in our network, and then obviously we make them available to the entrepreneurs as and when they need. So here in South Africa, Endeavour was set up by Adrian Gore, David Frankel, Paul Harris, and Isaac Shongwe. So really, incredibly successful entrepreneurs and really strong business leaders in our market. And they obviously, made up the board in the early years. And we've got comparable business leaders or entrepreneurs to those individuals in all these 45 markets that we operate in. And it's amazing to see that the more senior the mentor that we have in our network, openly, the more freely these individuals give of their time towards the entrepreneurs as and when they're asking for assistance or support, whether it be capital raising or expanding into a new market or looking to build out a partnership or, whatever it is. And it's not, as Endeavour, we don't, in our portfolio, we don't have businesses that are sort of small. We only well positioned to start supporting and actively assisting businesses that are, we call it probably the earliest is the pre-Series A or Series A stage. And to put that into rands, that would be, probably 10 million rand of annual revenue and growing at 50 to 100% would be the earliest that Endeavour, as our team, South Africa or globally, will start working with a business. But just to put it in context, here in South Africa, we work with probably 100 high growth entrepreneurs. Of that, say the top 30 that we work with, their average revenue is roughly 350 million rand a year and growing anywhere between 20 and 50%. The averages at the moment are looking at they've grown at 33% for the last 3 years on a average basis, but they also create an enormous amount of jobs. So these top
Alison,
30 businesses,
they've clearly done incredibly well. Alison, we're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Alison Collier, Managing Director at Endeavour South Africa. It's a fascinating story. Thank you so much.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking, proud sponsor of South African Auto Week 2025.
US markets turning positive tonight. Hopes around a cut in interest rates beginning to filter through. The Dow Jones up 0.04, the Nasdaq up 0.33%, the S&P 500 up 0.22. Back to the Money Show back tomorrow. I'll speak to you again on Friday. Good evening. It's 8 o'clock.
This is EWN.
Good evening. I'm Maki Molapo. The South African Chamber of Commerce in the U.S. is concerned over the expiration of the African Growth and Opportunity Act with no definitive time frame from Congress on its renewal. AGOA is a trade agreement that dates back to 2000 and expired yesterday. It allows for duty-free access to America for goods from countries in sub-Saharan Africa, including South Africa. While President Donald Trump's administration supports a one-year extension of the non-reciprocal African Growth Opportunity Act, the renewal lies with Congress. SACUSA President Neil Diamond says since the U.S. government is unfunded as of this morning, the AGOA renewal may not be a focus for Congress.